Hi, everybody. Welcome to Inside Scoop with Sue. Today, I am here with Dr. RJ Jackson. So happy to be here with you. Thanks for making the time to talk to us. Now, you have an unusual story. I mean, the thing that most comes up about you is orthodontist turned teen life coach. Not a common trajectory, but apparently you are a teen whisperer and really good at that. So you have worked with over 1,000 teens, helping them build confidence and motivation. And Dr. RJ has his own podcast, A Teen's Perspective, helping parents see the future, and a book, Parenting Happy Teens, It's an Inside Job. So I think one of the things that drew me to you is, what we all really want to know as parents is, what are our kids thinking? I mean, it gets curated so much that by the time we get it, we have no idea like how many layers they went through of resolving this conflict or not. And you're in the know. So you're going to tell us today, what are kids thinking about? I want to start with the question that everyone kind of asks you first. Why did you decide to become a teen life coach? Because it's not a common trajectory, as I said. So I want to ask you, when you were delivering services to teenagers in your professional career as an orthodontist, was there something that made you think, I could do more for these kids? I'm seeing X, Y, and Z going on, and I think I could make a difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. Really, it has to go back to the conversation I had with my guidance counselor when I was my junior year in high school. And, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So he was like, hey, think about it. What do you want to do? And my response was, I want people to be happy. Like if I can help people to be happy, then, that's my life mission. And he basically told me I had two options. I could be a comedian, which I was not funny. So I'm like, I'm not going that route. Or I could be a orthodontist, create smiles. I'm like, okay, I'll go that route. And sure enough, I kind of, went through the whole path to becoming an orthodontist. And right away, when I opened my practice, I'm like, the mission is creating smiles so that our kids can be happy. And sure enough, braces after braces, smiles after smiles, they're not using them. So that's what really kind of, told me I need to really find more to serve my patients, because they have a perfectly, great smile, but then they come in and they're either mad, some are depressed, some have a terrible relationship with their parents. So that really motivated me to see what else I can do to help them.
That's great. That's great. So I said this already, but I watched a lot of your TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and it's clear to me that you're a teen whisperer, and we all dream when it's our kids to have that same ability to really connect with our kids in the same way. So give us like a hint at what do you do that kind of makes the kids settle down and trust you, that's to the point where they want to confide in you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I believe it's really my desire to understand their world. I think, with my TikToks and us making fun of bad parenting, they feel like I get them. And I feel like I do. I've actually coached over 5,000 teenagers. And throughout my years of coaching, you see themes. And oftentimes there's a huge disconnect between the teenager and the parents. Now, every generation will tell you this, but I do believe this generation in particular, there's probably a bigger divide because of technology. A lot of the parents didn't grow up with cell phones. So this really just creates this bigger divide. And sometimes it causes more problems in the relationship.
Okay, I want to clarify something you said. You said a lot of parents didn't grow up with it. All of us didn't grow up with it. Not a lot, unless they could time travel or something, like all of us. So you're really good at getting them to open up and be vulnerable with you. But then you're also really good at giving them good feedback and advice. So, where does that come from? You don't have teenagers, you have little kids. Where does that come from?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, whenever I, noticed that they needed help in the orthodontic practice, I really started, researching. And I'm like, I was thinking to myself, therapy, counseling, but it was a conversation that I had with one of my patients that really reminded me of life coaching, because I experienced my first life coach when I was in dental school, and they said something that reminded me of the conversation, and that's when I'm like, life coaching is the answer. And I went, got certified and all that, but then I learned so many tools, and I would tell you this one. This is probably the most impactful kind of like light bulb moment for me, is when I fully understood that life happens in the mind. And when whenever I'm working with teenagers and they see this for themselves, it changes everything, because it puts them in the driver's seat of their experience in life. It's something I always work with teenagers, especially as it relates to their parents, is that, you can't control another person, but you can absolutely influence the relationship by managing your own emotions and managing your own thoughts. And that can absolutely grow relationships. So I believe this idea of me understanding their worldview, validating their feelings, and say, hey, it's okay to feel the way you feel, but here are some tools so that you can accomplish what you want in life, whether it's a better relationship, whether it's better grades. And I believe that's really have the biggest impact over that.
Okay, so we're going to take questions from the audience, but Stephanie, I'm going to hold on to yours for 1 second, because I just want to ask you this question, which is, do you need to know the answer, or do you need to walk the teen to their solution?
No, it's a great question. And I think this is where the difference between teenage life coaching versus adult life coaching. So the general view for a life coach is that the person has the answer. So it's our job to really open their minds and remove these mental blocks so that they can, accomplish their answer. And whatever they choose, as a coach, we support it. Was a little different from teenagers, because there are some things they just don't know. So part of my coaching, there is a training aspect. So I treat it almost like you would a sports coach, football coach. They have to train the players. And then, in the game, they're calling plays so that they can overcome any obstacles to win the game. What's the same way with my coaching? I train them. They have to understand certain things of the mind, how their emotions impact their behavior and their decisions to do certain things to accomplish their goals. And I have plays, or what we call, tools, so that they can overcome these different mental blocks to accomplish what they want as well.
Cool. Okay, that's great. So Stephanie says that her son asked if she could take him to the store for Valentine's Day. And he wanted his, he made up some story, like it was for his lunch table friends, but really she found out that it was for a girl he liked. And he just turned 16. We're close and open about everything. She doesn't know what to do with this piece of information. How do I prepare for this? And I think I'm so glad Stephanie asked it, because it's a hard one to ask. People feel like when it comes to teen dating, we're supposed to know, but how are we supposed to know? So what's your response to Stephanie?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. And what I tell parents in a situation like this is, do not feel the pressure to feel like you have to know everything. But what's more important than anything is having the relationship with the child so that they're open enough to tell you what's going on. Because the fact of the matter is, I always make this joke kind of when I'm talking with parents with the teenagers. Oftentimes it's the blind leading the blind, in a sense. So what that means is, like, the teenagers have no clue what's going on, and their friends, they don't have a clue either, but they ask each other for advice, and they really don't know. So I really encourage the parents to open the door for communication. And this is not always is like, hey, you can tell me anything. This is by your actions. How are you reacting whenever your child tells you something? How are you reacting when they're doing something that you pretty much don't agree with? That's what determines if they're comfortable enough to just share things with you.
So it's funny because, we talk about this a lot, how we react, but tell us, how should we react? Because so much of it's visceral. Like your kid tells you something, and even though your brain is saying answer with these words, your face is going like this, right? Like, and you can't fool them. So how do we react? What's the best way to react?
Yeah, so I think this is a wonderful question. And in many cases, especially if it's something that really shocks you, it's best not, to not have the discussion. So reaction is one thing, but what really creates the divide is the words that's followed by the reaction. So you react like, oh my gosh, and then you either scold or you show your disapproval. So the best thing is, yes, you react because that's natural. You can't really stop your reaction, but you can say, hey, let's talk about this tomorrow. Let's talk about, let's go for a walk and talk about this, or let me have some lunch and talk about this, because ultimately what we're trying to do is calm down, because you're not going to be able to accomplish your goal. And I always remind parents of this: whenever you are punishing your child, or even lecturing your child for that matter, you have a goal. There's a goal that you want something out of this. You want your child to either listen to you, you want your child to pay attention. So if you overreact in a sense of yelling and screaming, you did not accomplish your goal. So the best way is just don't say anything. React and say, okay, let's talk about this later. Calm down. Scream in a pillow. Whatever you need to do, and then talk about it when you're calm.
Wow, that is so good, because there's so much pressure like having your brain go rapid fire to come up with the right answer, and you don't have to do that. Everybody, nope. We just heard it here. You don't have to do that. You can actually put the brake on and say, I need a moment. I love that. Okay, so I see that you talk to parents all the time. You talk to kids all the time. And I want to know if you were going to pick one change. Like, you hear from the kids, my parents always, and you see that thread running through every conversation. What's the one thing that we can change that will have the biggest impact on our relationship with our kids?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. So the one thing I hear from teenagers is a general statement of my parents. They don't value my opinion, my views. Now in today's with technology, there's so many opinions and views out there. So it's not uncommon for a child to have a different view than what the way they were raised. It's very common now in families, because there's so much information out there. So what I always encourage parents to do is always try to see your child, especially a teenager, as an equal. Now, the way I explain this is there's a different conversation you can have whenever a parent is up here and the child is down here, and you're talking down to them. But it completely changes the dynamic if whenever you're having a conversation, just to be on their level. And that's perfectly fine. You can still be a parent, have boundaries. And I'm not saying you have to be their friend and all that, but I'm saying you definitely have to, it's great to have boundaries, but still communicate with them on their level so that you can have meaningful discussions. And that way the child feels heard. And oftentimes that can also improve the relationship.
It's a good one. Hard. I mean, easy to say, hard to do, right?
Absolutely. That's why I always encourage, pause, take a break, have a conversation. If it's, if it's something they're saying to you is completely, someone, you didn't teach them this and they believe this. Okay, well, thanks for sharing that. Pause, and wait till you're calm and then have a discussion after that.
Okay, Stephanie brings up another point which I think is pretty universal. So her kid is getting older and starting to be interested in relationships. And as a mom, she's feeling the time slide away. And she says, we're best friends. And now he's turning into a young man. So what do you say to that, mom?
Yeah, it's natural. It's a natural part of parenting. You are training your child up, but at some point, they're going to leave the nest. And this is why I have preached for so long. Relationships are more important than anything. The relationship with your child is more important than cleaning their room and their grades and, their, sometimes disrespectful conversations. You really want to focus on the relationship first when you're making decisions. So as the child is starting to date and starting to move away from the parent, we know this is a natural process, but knowing that you are there for your child and that the child knows you're there for them can keep this relationship long-term. Because remember, at some point, this 16-year-old will be 30 and then 40. So you really want to focus on that relationship. So when when they have kids of their own, you guys still can connect in some way.
That's really nice. Okay. I wanted to ask the question, what do we do wrong? But when my kids were teenagers, sometimes it was breathing. So I don't want to go that specific. I want to say, what do you hear from teenagers when they're at their best and they're really reflective of maybe one or two things that parents are just really getting wrong?
Oh, I would love to share this. This is something I actually discovered. A child didn't tell me that. I just discovered it on my own from coaching so many parents and teenagers. And this is something I honestly have never read anywhere. I've never seen it taught anywhere. So this is pretty much original information, but it's so impactful. And this is about the levels of pain. So let me just quickly explain this. All humans move away from pain naturally and move towards pleasure. So whenever a child does something wrong, they break a rule, oftentimes parents give multiple layers of pain to the point where the child no longer can learn from the actual mistake. Instead, they're looking at the parent and say, oh, my parent is unreasonable. I'll give you an example. So let's say, for instance, your child lied to you about a social media account. You found it. Naturally, what happens is the parent confronts them. That's pain. Just a confrontation. Just, hey, I found out you lied to me. That's pain in itself. But then the parent yells. That's more pain. That's the second layer of pain. Then they take away the phone. That's 3 layers of pain. Then they talk about it for weeks. That's more pain. So the child never really can learn from their mistake because now they're saying, oh, my parent is just so unreasonable. So what I encourage parents to do is give them 1 layer of pain. That's all you want them to do, is just give them 1 layer of pain so their brain can say, okay, lying equals this pain. I don't want to do that anymore, so I'm not going to do that again. And that way it still preserves the relationship. So like you mentioned, it's tough to do, but if you're aware of it, awareness is the key. If you become aware of it, you can start to say, okay, I just yelled at my child. Therefore, I can't take away their phone anymore. I can't go do this anymore. I already gave the pain. So that's what makes us as parents start to be more intentional about how we're going to address whenever a child does something wrong. Because then we don't want to yell, because that's not really that best. That's the best option. We want to do something that we believe is going to be more impactful.
More productive. We don't want to get to the point where we're starting with, give me the keys, you'll never drive again, hand me the phone, you're never going to get it back. Like, those are not good.
Right.
Not good things. Okay, so we have another question here, story, which I think also, I mean, we're all sharing in this journey together. And so I'm so grateful when people put their questions out, because you're not the only one, Brandy, dealing with this. So someone else is going to get the benefit of your bravery in asking this question. So she has a senior in high school who's checked out, and his grades are all dropping, and he's really not moving toward college, which was something he wanted to do. And when they talk to him about it, he says, I've got it. And so she's kind of at a loss for what to do here.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is something else I believe is like a blind spot in parenting. But before I say that, number one, I will say that the fact that when I see a parent asking questions, trying to become a better parent, that tells me right away they're an amazing parent. Because, the fact that you're trying, I think, speaks volumes. So wonderful question on that one. But what I want to share with you guys is this idea of focus. The science has already discovered that a child cannot handle multiple points of focus at a time. So what that means is, if you're complaining to your child about their hygiene, if you're talking about chores, if you're talking about their respect, and you're talking about school, it's going to be very, very difficult to really get this child and you to truly help this child. So what I always tell parents is to choose one battle at a time. So that means if you're worried about school, make this your battle, in a sense. So that means you can't complain about him playing video games too much. You can't complain about not doing chores and talking to his friends too much. You only want to focus on how you can serve him during this time of school. And it really starts, number one, with the relationship. So if you guys have a wonderful relationship, you're already one step ahead. If you don't, work on the relationship. Secondly, have conversations, because we know it's a pain or pleasure. We already know that. If he's not doing the work, there's pain. And what I discovered in coaching so many teenagers is oftentimes the parents are the ones causing the pain, because when they're checking up on their child and they're putting pressure on their child, they believe it's pain, and sometimes it can cause them to shut down. So, in many cases, when a parent stops talking about it, sometimes you actually see improvement. So definitely, work on the relationship for sure, and then have conversations. But if you realize that, hey, I'm the one's causing the pain, try to back away and see if your child can actually handle it.
I think it all comes from us feeling afraid.
Absolutely.
Of them not moving forward in the path that we kind of envisioned. So how do we handle that when, it's like your kids know it's your pain, right? Like they see it in your face and in your reaction. So they're letting you down and they don't know what to do. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's all about focus. So what I encourage parents to do is focus on the person that you want your child to become, and not necessarily what they accomplish. So yes, I want my child to be a straight A student. I want them to go to the best college. But if I know I have, instilled in my child determination and motivation and love and caring, I know they'll figure it out. Life is a journey. If you could be there as a supporter and not one that's causing pressure, maybe they do go a different path that don't want them to go through, as far as not going to college, but then they figure it out. I mean, more than any time in history, we see that people are wildly successful and they never went to college. We see students who did not do well in school and they become very successful business people. So, the story doesn't end with whether your child goes to college. So the more you can relax and take the pressure off yourself, the more the child will feel that as well.
Okay, I want to go back. I asked you to tell us what we're doing wrong. Give us a yay you. What are we doing right according to the kids?
Yeah, I would say the effort. I will say that. I do believe that teenagers see that their parents are trying. They're trying even whenever they go to extreme measures. They're still trying. So I do believe that children can see that that the parents are trying to make an effort. So that's definitely one thing. The fact that, and that's why I wanted to compliment these questions, is the fact that you're trying to be a better parent, and that really speaks volumes.
Great. Okay. And now I want to do a little bit about fun. You have fun on Instagram and TikTok, and you have these series that they're funny. They're a little painfully true. So you have one that's Parents Be Like. Tell us some of those that, where do they come from? Is it from what the kids are telling you, or you just witness it? Give us some examples of that.
Yeah. So the two biggest ones is really the biggest of all is Give Me Your Phone. And I actually, got that idea because, I had so many teenagers complaining about getting their phones taken away. So, and they would be like, oh, if I roll my eyes, or if I breathe wrong, I'm gonna get my phone taken. So then I would do like a little skit and say, oh, you're breathing the wrong way, give me your phone. And then, that one kind of went viral. So really just trying to have fun with what teenagers are sharing about their parents. Because the goal of the TikTok is not to think that all parents are bad. We really want to highlight bad parenting, not bad parents. But the parent, we all do things that we consider bad parenting. Sometimes we yell. That's bad parenting, but it doesn't mean you're a bad parent. We all go through these things. So we want to just highlight and make fun. But really the key of it is drawing the teenagers in. Because if you look in some of the comments and how we work with the teenagers, we draw them in with that type of, the video because it's funny to them. But then I always turn it back on them and say, hey, what can you do to grow the relationship? What can you do to actually share this information with your parents so that they can understand where you're coming from? In my coaching program, we actually do report cards where the teenagers get to grade the parents. And, all the parents love it. They think it's very eye-opening because a lot of things they just don't know. And when you become aware of something, then you can actually work on it.
So you give the report card to the parents?
The parents give them we give them to the parents, but they give them to the teen so that the teenagers can judge them. So that's always pretty exciting.
But they get the parents get the feedback from the kid.
Yeah.
Wow. That's brave. I'm not sure I'm that brave. I don't know if I want to do that. Okay, so tell them where they can find you on TikTok and Instagram.
Yes, at the THEDRRJ. So at the Dr. RJ.
Okay, great. And any other viral ones you want to tell us about? I mean, the phone one is hysterical. I mean, I don't know anyone who hasn't uttered that at some point. You kind of got to,
Yeah. No, we did one scale. It's pretty funny where we were just acting like, basically, a good parenting versus bad parenting. And we had kind of fun with it where, I would put on this serious face. And when a parent is doing the right thing, I'll be like, and that's wrong. It's like basically it's called bad parenting pro tips. Like, oh, you shouldn't do that. You should do this. And it's more to have fun with it. But yeah, everything is kind of surrounded around this idea of the things that parents do that the teenagers absolutely, dislike.
The list is plentiful. You don't run out of material.
Not at all.
That's great. Okay, so Christina says, I got into a pattern of asking too often about school. And so she now switched to 1 day a week and puts everything else on hold, keeps her questions to herself, shifting the responsibility to her kid. And she hasn't looked at his grades online. And so she's letting it be her kid's responsibility, which I think, like, 2 thumbs up. Kudos to Christina.
No, it's exactly what I encourage parents to do. I mean, she's doing exactly what she's supposed to do in the sense of, hey, in fact, what was eye-opening to me is when a teenager, I was coaching a teenager and the parents, and a teenager told the parent and say, listen, I truly believe that you care more about school than you do about me. And the teenager's like, what is my favorite, what is my favorite video game? Tell me my closest friends. It's like, basically what sharing is like, hey, all you do is talk about school every single day. What about me as your child? So I thought that was very eye-opening.
Okay, I think we have one question over here which says, is it okay to check their phones? What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I think it depends. I think it's not the action per se. It's how your child perceives it. So I'm a big believer in anytime there's technology that the parents use what I call training wheels. In other words, hey, you're going to join this new social media platform. I'm going to be with you at the beginning. And then I'm going to taper myself off. And then you're, riding bikes without training wheels. I really like that approach. But just remember that it's really how your child perceives it. So if you're checking your phone and a child perceives that as, oh, my parents, they don't trust me. Well, that's not really a good scenario to grow a relationship. So I would have the communication with your child. And if you need to check their phone, definitely have some type of communication. But what I find in most cases is just a lot of fear for the parents. So really the goal to prevent the fear is to train them properly. So, okay, this is how you use a phone. Whenever you get these type of photos coming to you, this is how you handle this situation and work with them. And then you can just kind of let them fly on their own. And then you can have some trust in that way.
Well, I guess I feel like you can have some trust, but you also have to know that they're going to screw up like we all do in life. It's not going to be one way. So I think that balance is so hard for us because we're trying to protect them from mistakes and you can't.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. We have a question here. My son is 15. Our sweet, cuddly boy is now a moody 6'5" kid who looks 19. Wow. That's a tall kid there, man.
He is. I'm 6'5". So yeah, he's tall.
He seems to fly off the handle with any comments we make. I have heard that boys will come out on the other end once they are 17, 18, and 19, and that this is a teenage hormonal phase. Is it true?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's definitely when you see with boys, definitely some of the aggression can definitely come. But there's still ways to kind of prevent that from happening so often. And it really just comes down to paying attention to your child. So there's times where you can say things to your child where they will receive it better. So, number one, I always tell parents, pay attention to the timing. When they're just getting out of school, that's not the right time to talk to them really about anything. Maybe if they're arguing with a friend, probably don't want to bring up chores. So you really want to pay attention to the timing and just notice whenever your child is in these, happier moods, kind of a crabby mood, and that you can kind of choose when you want to bring up certain information.
Okay, so this conversation to me is your advice is so fantastic. And we talk a lot about reaching out to therapists if your kids are struggling or if you need parenting advice. So you have had kids who've gone to psychologists, social workers, and it hasn't helped them. And having a coach was a better fit for them. Why? What makes what you're doing sometimes the better approach so the parents can think about if their kid isn't getting what they need from the therapist, how do they find a coach that serves their needs?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks for asking that. I would say this, I truly believe from, all the experience I've had is that, a child should seek a coach first. I would say 97% of teenagers should seek a coach, and the coach should be the one to refer to a therapist. And there is a reason for that. So as a child, for anybody, words have meaning. So when you go to a therapist or a counselor, you are viewed, especially as a therapist and a psychologist, you're viewed as a patient. Okay, so when your child walks in, you're a patient. That means something is wrong with you. I need to discover what's wrong, and then I can work on it. When you come see a coach, we don't view you as a patient. I view your child as a person with an unbelievable amount of potential. And I know that we all have obstacles to overcome. And I also know that there's something you want. There's some goals that you have. Even though teenagers don't call them goals, they're basically, it's organized wants. So they have wants. And whenever you see a coach, we treat them that way. We treat them as like, okay, I know you could accomplish anything. So, let's discuss this, what's holding you back in a sense. So I think that alone, the child feels that. They feel like, oh, I feel kind of special, because think about a star basketball player in high school. Who would get more of the special coaching? The star that can go to the NBA or the child who rides the bench? Is usually the star. They want to surround him with a shooting coach, a basketball, a dribbling coach, because they know they have so much potential. Well, that's the same way we do it with life coaches. So I would say absolutely life coaches should be the first step. And we work with therapists because we're focused on the present and the future. Oftentimes therapy focuses on the past, like what happened, where did it all start? And some kids actually need that. With a lot of, severe depression, we do both. They work on where it started, where's the trauma. And then for us, we're working on how to move forward and accomplish your goals.
That's a really clear distinction. Thank you. So Stephanie says, I wish you were my son's orthodontist. And I was just wondering, you're very smart. Have you figured out how to do virtual orthodonture?
Yeah, not yet, until we get some robots. So yeah, luckily I'm blessed. I have a wonderful associate. So he actually does all of the in-office work. And then I look at the cases on the, when it's on free time, but ultimately I do a lot of just coaching, to be honest.
Okay, Dr. RJ, this was really such a gift. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
No, I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.